Welcome to another episode of Formula One Philosophy. I'm your host, Nick McKiley, with my hetero life mate, Sean Medeiros, for episode 6 of us recording together. Today's Monday, March 11th. We got a lot of recaps for you. We have 2 races that we didn't comment on yet, so we're going to hash those out today. Would you like to say hi, Sean?
Hi, everyone.
How are you today, Sean?
I don't know. Today was an interesting day.
Oh, boy. You want to talk about it? We got some time.
Sure, why not? I've got to go down to Satan's asshole this week.
Detroit.
Bingo.
Oh, boy. Again. That's twice in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yep, it's that time of year, unfortunately.
Meetings, getting ready for the New Year's project, stuff like that, like new project years, I'm assuming.
No, this one is a certain company can't figure out what the fuck's going on, so I got to go down and fix it.
Oh, we may have to bleep that. You sort of bleeped yourself, but yeah. But I think everybody knows which company that is. So.
I don't know that you know what company that is.
Oh, I don't want to say, but I have quite a few guesses. Anyways. As always, Sean and I are joined by Gatsby and Senna. Senna, who has been running around very fast today, is fast asleep. Gatsby is pretending to be asleep, but Sean and I would like to introduce you to him as our new producer. He's the new producer of Formula One Philosophy. He's going to do a great job, I think. I think we made the right hire, Sean.
Yeah, I'm still on the fence about it. He's just the only one that showed up.
Yeah. Way to go, everybody. Like we announced that, I'm assuming, on Instagram or something. It sounds like us, right? That we announced that we were looking for a producer position.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I hope so. And only Gatsby showed up. Everybody who had a chance to be part of the ground floor. And you let a dog beat you to the producer. Do you have anything to say, Gatsby? Oh, we're going Yeah, I was going to hold off on introducing that, but you know what? You want to tell everybody what you found?
What are you talking about? It's Gatsby. He oddly sounds a lot like Murray Walker.
Murray Walker. What a legend. Rest in peace. All right. As always, Formula1_philosophy at Instagram. And it's Formula1philosophypod@gmail.com if you want to join the fantasy league we set up.
F1philosophypod@gmail.com.
F1, yeah, that's right. What's the word when you read out? I think it's phonetically. No, that's not right. No. Anyways, F1philosophypod@gmail.com. We're off to a flying start today. You might want to get Gatsby to say something about that. But yeah, we're off to a flying start today. Join our fantasy league for the week, because Sean and I are crushing it. We might be
1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights, 4 lights, 5 lights.
And go. Give us a go, go, go.
Let's go, 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 go.
That's what we like to hear.
Gatsby's a little slow on the timing.
It's your first day, Gatsby. We'll let all this slide. But don't think we're going to put up with shit like this the entire time. All right. I actually have something to talk about.
What would you like to talk about?
2020 was a pandemic.
Yes.
Come 2024, we have an epidemic. I've been noticing this, serving, and I have to ask the question. White men, and I'm not talking like, because Sean and I are white men. We're European white men, and I'm a little bit more disgusting because I got Middle Eastern in me too, but we're still white men. But I'm talking about native to North America, like the English descendants, maybe Dutch descendants, those type of white men, okay? I've been noticing all of them. The mullet came in 2020 and has never left. I don't know why, but that's not what we're talking about here today. But I've noticed it's all mullets, baseball caps, and fruity drinks. White men used to be a staple of beer and whiskey. They used to be something to look up to. Sean and I used to look up to old, mustached white men, chiseled faces. You know what I mean? Like the lines in their faces that look like they've seen like 20-hour days of work for 60 years. You know, those types of people. We looked up to them because they drank whiskey and beer.
He doesn't speak for me.
Point
I
I'm,
might be a figment of his imagination, but he doesn't speak for me.
point I'm trying to make is they used to drink beer and whiskey. Now they're all drinking fruity drinks. What's going on? Have you noticed this epidemic at all? Are you drinking fruity drinks? Sean, just come clean with me.
I'm not,
Okay, good.
but I don't understand why you're so upset about it.
I'm not upset about it. I'm just wondering why. When did that happen? It's because they're all doing it.
Why not?
Because whiskey and beer is a man's drink, a white man's drink.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love whiskey.
And I love beer.
Some people don't want to taste the leather boot that's been on fire.
But that's what makes you a man. That puts hair on your chest. I don't know. I just feel like this is like monkey see, monkey do. Like just everybody's doing it because everybody else is doing it. I'm curious.
Sure. And it's okay to be curious.
Not bi-curious, but curious.
I mean, it's okay to be that too if you want to be that. I don't judge, Nick.
We're off to a flying start today. We might need some Murray Walker inspiration here. But yeah, I don't know. It's odd. It used to be you could count on a couple of things like the sun going around, the earth going around, the sun or going around the earth if you're a flat earther. But earth going around the sun, the moon in the sky, and white men drinking whiskey and beer. And I don't know what's happened.
People realize that they don't have to pay attention to the heteronormative standards that we set.
Oh my God. That you and I said?
No, society as a whole.
Okay.
We don't set standards, Nick. We're just two dudes in a basement.
Here at F1 Philosophy, we would like to bring back that heteronormative stance. Let's.
No, my goodness!
Great job, Gatsby. It's funny every time. I'm not in charge of that soundboard because I will abuse it, so it's in good hands.
No.
No!
It's funny. It's fun. I'm gonna keep laughing, and it's just funny every time. Okay. Today, we're here to talk about first the Bahrain Grand Prix and our thoughts on that, and then we'll get to the Saudi Grand Prix afterwards and all the craziness that went on there. All right. So I'm actually going to start with the note I took. The first note I took for the Bahrain Grand Prix, and I'm pretty sure this was on lap 10.
It took you that long.
Yeah. Probably should have wrote it sooner. I think I'm overstating how late it was, but or conservative estimate on lap 10. Verstappen is untouchable is the first note I wrote. And I think that pretty much speaks for itself. Nothing's changed from last year. He's still winning. That was his 8th in a row winning the Bahrain Grand Prix. And by lap 10, I knew it was over.
And it's only his 8th in a row because of that standout in Singapore.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for that,
He would have had...
close to 20.
Yeah. So Saudi, yeah, well, I won't spoil it because nobody's watched the Grand Prix, but yeah, Saudi would have been 20.
Right.
Yeah, and so that's pretty impressive. How many races in a row do you think he's going to get now? Like, I don't see him losing in Australia, and then after that it's Japan and China, maybe China, because they haven't raced there in a while. But he's getting at least 10 in Australia.
But he has raced there. Yes, he has. He's old enough to have raced there.
Yes, but I think last time they had the Chinese Grand Prix was what, 2018?
2019.
2019, okay.
2019, so he would have been with Red Bull, but it's not those cars.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like a completely different stratosphere compared to what we are
Yeah,
now.
and it's interesting because that track's a bit of a shit show.
How so?
It's just flat.
Like no elevation, just like minor chicanes.
There is elevation, but it's all kind of in one corner. As far as I remember, it's been a while. But that turn one that kind of snails into itself, the tightening right-hander, that has some elevation, but I'm pretty sure that's the only elevation on the track. And it kind of feels like a poorly designed go-kart track.
Like, is there anything in that track that could cause a major chaos on the first corner? That's what I was trying to say.
The first corner in itself is pretty chaotic. That tightening right-hander is not very wide, and those cars are extremely wide.
So that's interesting.
one standout for me is Lance Stroll in Williams. Probably, 2016, 2017, something like that. Completely butchering it right after, turn 2, turn 3, and taking out 2 or 3 people, at least causing damage to 2 or 3 people. So there's always something like that. But that's assuming he's not 10 seconds ahead after turn 1.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. He may not win if he's not on pole. Is it a fast track? Is it a slow track?
It's a pretty fast track. It's got a lot of high speed. It's got some high speed corners as well. So
should favor the Red Bull then.
I mean, everything's going to favor the Red Bull except Singapore. But that might even change this year.
Yeah. And you and I talked about that in our predictions, that maybe they finally win in Singapore this year. And there's no evidence to say that won't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
what are your thoughts? First thoughts. That was my first thoughts. Verstappen's untouchable. He obviously won the race. He won the race by, I'm pretty sure, at least 21 seconds.
yeah, I think it was closer to 30.
Yeah.
It was up there. I think you're right. I think this might be the year where we come extremely close to having a 24 victory champion. It's still early, and we can't get too bummed out about it because it's still early. There's plenty that can go wrong. But holy shit.
I'm not bummed out about it. That's just the thing. I'm not bummed out. I enjoy watching people dominate in Formula One, at least. In other sports, I don't. But in
You
Formula,
heard it here, guys. He likes watching people dominate.
you had to make this sexual.
Of course.
Gatsby, what do you think of this?
Like a buried up a drain pipe.
Gatsby. I thought we said we'd keep this PG.
I mean, it sounded pretty PG to me, unless you're making...
Well, you started with the X-rated thoughts, and then Gatsby added to the X-rated thoughts.
I mean, he's a dog, man. He doesn't know what the hell's going on.
And a dumb dog at that. You're hanging by a thread already, Gatsby. But yeah, I don't mind watching someone achieve greatness. It's boring in the sense that there's no one else winning. Like there's no back and forth title fight. And I used to complain about that with the Vettel and Hamilton years as why they ruined F1. But this is a different type of greatness, right? Like this is like consistent perfection. This is something we may never see again. And so that's why I'm not bummed out about it if he wins every race.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this earlier today from a probability standpoint, right? Because we hear all the time about certain drivers were potentially world champions, but never got to the right place at the right time type of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I know you probably have thoughts about this and the Norris type of thing where, I don't have the car. There's something to be said about that, right? Like, we don't know in previous years, has there been a truly great driver who is legitimately stuck in a shit car, right? And I'm not talking about people like Felipe Nasser or Bruno Senna, those guys. No. What about these guys like Bottas, for example? If he wasn't partnered with Hamilton, if Lewis Hamilton didn't exist and that Mercedes car was what it was, would Bottas have had his chance to get 7 world championships?
I don't know. I understand what you're saying. You're trying to say he was wrong place, right time. Wrong place, wrong time. Max is right place, right time. But
there's more to that too, because what I'm trying to get at is you have an amazing car, right? You've got arguably the best name in race car design, vehicle design, creating a world-beating car. You've got, as far as I'm concerned, an F1 android who does nothing but race. You put them together and you get what we have here. An entire season's, almost 2 entire seasons worth of finishes, and the majority of those finishes have been P1.
Mm-hmm.
It's unheard of. And what I'm trying to get at is with all the cars and all the iterations of cars we've had going back to the 1950s and all the drivers and different styles of drivers and everything else, if you put that all together and you try and figure out the probability of getting the best driver in the best car at the same time, we might be witnessing history in the sense that this is truly a once-in-a-lifetime domination.
Yeah. In that sense, yeah. I guess you could say that Senna was close to that. Senna was like a once-in-a-lifetime type of driver in a once-in-a-lifetime designed car in the, what was it, the 89 season? I think where he won, like, him and Berger won, like, almost all the races.
When he was at McLaren?
Yes.
It was him and Prost won 18 of 19 races or something like that. And Berger won the only other non-McLaren one.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure it's because Senna took out himself and Prost.
That was the Japanese Grand Prix then you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and I just want to add that I've compared to you in the past Carlos Sainz to Gerhard Berger and Charles Leclerc is Jean Alesi. So Michael Schumacher is coming to Ferrari soon. But anyways, no, we haven't seen this before. And to your point with Bottas, you're right, because you said it afterwards. Verstappen's an android. Bottas did not have that ethic. He did not have that work ethic.
The point is nobody has.
Schumacher and Vettel sort of did. Sort of. I would say Schumacher more.
Right. But I'll compare, like, this is something I saw after the Saudi race. We all know that Verstappen likes to sim race as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got his sim racing setups. You know, I'm sure he's paid tens of thousands of dollars for these things. And someone posted video of him racing sports cars on whatever game it was in the rain using a controller. So this is Max Verstappen racing in an esports series with all these other esports nerds, basically.
Geeks.
Spend all their time behind the wheels of these sim rigs at a semi-professional level. And Verstappen's there sitting in a chair with a controller, and he's beating them all.
With rain pouring on him.
No, it's raining in the game.
Oh, raining in the game. I thought by the way you described it, he's just sitting there with a controller in the rain.
No. Sitting in a shower in the rain, no. But the point is, it was raining in that particular race, which should make it more difficult to keep up, let alone on a controller where you don't have the feedback you would in a wheel, right? So it just goes to show you that this guy does nothing but sim race or race.
Yeah, and I didn't really want to get into it because I think it's a whole other podcast. It's his father had a lot to do with that. And that was another thing we got from the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian Grand Prix was the controversy behind the scenes in Red Bull. Like I said, don't really want to delve into it, but holy shit.
I think we need an entire episode, maybe this is a therapist episode, to dive into Jos Verstappen and how he managed to create an F1 android while also deserving to be put behind bars.
And I'll just say this, it's fucking rich that the guy who almost killed his wife and traumatized his son is saying Horner's tearing the team apart. When we know, not 100%, but we're pretty positive it's you and Marco behind those leaks with Christian Horner's texts. And
but I do have to put it out there that if those texts are real, Horner kind of deserves everything that's coming his way.
Yeah. Yeah, what's with people sending dick pics, man? Like just so stupid.
Nobody wants to see
it. Girls don't want to see that.
No.
Unbelievable. What were you thinking? Like, if that's real, Horner, you deserve to get fired just for the dick pic. Everything else, it seems like the girl was just kind of like brushing him off. She was dealing with it. It seemed like that was the vibe I got, at least. And I feel bad for her. I do, because you shouldn't have to put up with that type of pressure after you've clearly said no several times from the looks of it.
Yeah, there is no ambiguity there at all.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, well, like I said, that's probably good for a therapist episode. But yeah, I brought that up just to ask, what's the likelihood, do you think, especially after these two wins, what's the likelihood you think he actually does go to Mercedes or another team for that matter?
Oof. That's a hard one because who do you protect, right? Red Bull isn't Red Bull without Christian Horner having done what he's done from a sporting standpoint, not a WhatsApp standpoint. But at the same time, you've got a car that's winning. You've got a designer who seems to be committed to the team, not the personnel. And you've got a driver who wants to win championships. And I think if it comes down to it, Max would rather be behind a car that he knows will win as opposed to having to develop another car.
Yeah.
So,
and especially looks like that's what Mercedes is right now. Mercedes is going backwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what we saw from the first two races. But yeah, just to finish that off, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The trifecta is what's won. It's what won at Ferrari. It's what's winning now at Red Bull. It's what won with the Vettel years as well. When you have a great team principal or technical team principal, yes, great engineer and a great driver who wants to win. You're seeing now the maximization of Red Bull, like the peak Red Bull with Verstappen, because he's way better than Vettel ever was. I like Vettel, but he's nowhere near Verstappen's level. And if you give up one piece of those three, it's not the same, and you're not going to win the same way. Because didn't Newey leave? Newey left for a bit in like 2014, right, or 2013 or something.
Yeah, he didn't leave. He's still employed by Red Bull, but he was getting antsy. His entire career, his life, he's well into his 60s now, has been Formula One.
Yeah, he's been there since the late 80s.
So he wanted to do something other than Formula One. And Red Bull didn't want to lose him, so they allowed him to do a couple of things. He designed a car for Gran Turismo. I forget what they called it, but essentially Red Bull, what do they call themselves? Red Bull Racing Technology or something like that. It's part of the Red Bull company, but they develop components and stuff, and they, every team on the grid has certain components that are developed by Red Bull and provided as purchase parts from Red Bull. Same with McLaren. McLaren Technology provides, I think, the ECUs or the energy stores for the powertrains. So that's not uncommon, but Newey designed this car for Gran Turismo, which then Red Bull Technology built, but it's never been driven because apparently it can reach, I forget what the hell it is. It's high 300 kilometers an hour, and apparently it'll pull up to 5 Gs in the corners. Wow. So there's actually no way to drive it.
This is a stock car. This is a stock car.
No.
Sorry.
This is a purpose-built car for the Gran Turismo game, but they actually built one.
Oh, I see.
So it's a race car. Like, it's his concept of what the ultimate race car could be.
I see.
Right? So he did that. He went off and he designed some sailboats for the America's Cup.
Did they win?
I don't know if they won, but I know they did pretty good. And then he worked with Aston Martin to develop the Valkyrie, which I believe it was either last year or it might be starting this year in Le Mans.
Oh.
Which there was some inkling that maybe Lance might go away from F1 to go race Valkyries in Le Mans, but that doesn't seem to be happening.
Not anytime soon, and we'll get into our thoughts of Lance Stroll in a bit. I will say for Bahrain, though, he did what he needed to do.
Yes.
Yeah, so he got where he needed to go. That was actually one of the notes I took, and I said I was right about Aston Martin. And we'll just get into this, and then I want to get some of your thoughts because we're going all off of my thoughts right now. But I had a feeling that Aston Martin was going to take a step back. I think that race in Bahrain is pretty. That's where they're going to be sitting most of the year. 9th, 10th, maybe even like 7th, 8th, 6th, 7th, around that area. And they're just not too good. They're not good developers. Like Lance is just going to keep fucking up from time to time. And Fernando just doesn't know how to get the most out of, or at least help develop a car in the right direction. He can get the most out of a decent car, but he's not going to help them move forward. So I think what we saw in Bahrain is where we're going to see Austin for most of the year.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I think Bahrain's an interesting one. We tested there last year and I think the year before. Yeah.
Yes.
So in 2022, they tested there and in Spain. And that's the first time we've done that, really. And I think now it's to the point where obviously everything changes race to race, but because we spend so much time in Bahrain, especially this year, having testing there and then starting the season there, it almost feels like you've raced the season by the time you get to the opening with how many laps they turn over 3 days and everything else. So I think out of anything, Bahrain might be a reasonable analog to say that's what we can expect from the season as a whole.
I hope so, because my predictions were Red Bull 1, Ferrari 2, McLaren 3, Mercedes 4, Austin 5. Actually, no, I had Austin 6. I had Austin 6. I did.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, if you're right, if that's an analog for what the season's going to be, my top 4 are good. My 5th is very bad because that's the other note I wrote. I'm wrong about Alpine. And holy shit.
I don't know that you are. Oh, wait, no, you had Alpine up there. I had Alpine as close to the bottom.
You had Alpine, I think you said 6th or 7th. I had Alpine at 5th. I had Alpine jumping Aston Martin.
Yeah, no, you're definitely wrong there.
Alpine, I don't want to talk about them too much again. We've already kind of hashed them out a little bit, but it's just they're not going to go forward, are they? It seems hopeless at least, because I think they're going to need a McLaren-style jump, a McLaren-style reformation, or a McLaren-style like discovery and engineering year over or throughout the season. And I don't, like we've talked about it before, and you've pointed out the problems with Fan Man before. They don't have it in them. It does not look like it. I think, unfortunately, this may be where they sit most of the season. They're lucky that the last 5 teams suck balls. Suck absolute balls. That they could finish 6 just because everybody else is so terrible. But but no, it's not gonna happen. I don't think Williams or B-Carb stay this way. But anyway, sorry, I'm not letting you get your thoughts across.
No, that's fine. It brings up a good point, because with Alpine, in a very French way of doing things, they don't have to do anything. They can stay exactly where they are and still get a reasonable haul of points to keep them off the bottom, simply because other teams will shit the bed. Other teams are going to try, they're going to push too hard, their drivers are going to fuck up, and Alpine will just be there to collect points, or at least collect finishes, let's say, like Ocon did today. Or not today.
A couple days ago.
On Saturday. Finished 13th, doesn't get any points for it. But if you remember our conversation about the countback, that 13th matters if you've got 3 teams on the bottom who are tied on points.
Yeah, and that's another point I want to bring up. Because Sauber's not scoring a fucking point this year, but based on their first 2 races. To fuck up 2 drivers in 2 different races with the same wheel problem? What the hell's going on there?
I mean, you're chasing very fine margins on speed on these pit stops. So everybody does whatever they can to get every 10th of a second out of a pit stop. So it's quite possible that whatever's happened is because they've gone too far in one direction and now their pit stops are inefficient. It doesn't change the point that they're fucking up, but they may need to take a step back and realize that, okay, let's spend 0.1 of a second more on our targeted pit stop instead of having to lose a minute trying to get a fucking wheel off.
Yeah. Yeah, like you could even do a 4-second pit stop and you're still within points distance. But no, they had to do a minute each in 2 different races. Like 4 seconds is a bad pit stop these days. But at least aim for that. I don't know. I just don't see, and like I've said before a million times, there's 2 drivers there that just do not seem to give a fuck about where they're going. Like Zhou I think this is all he got, unfortunately. And Bottas has decided to retire. And that goes back to our discussion earlier about Bottas. Like, he could have been a champion. He couldn't have been a champion. I don't know. Based on what I see now, I don't see anything. I don't see him overachieving. So I don't think he would have overachieved right place, right time at Mercedes. But yeah.
Sure. And as I was watching practice the past week, Zhou didn't look good in Saudi Arabia. I had him in my fantasy league for Bahrain. In practice, he wasn't doing too good. Obviously, he crashed out in FP3. Close to the end of FP3, he crashed out pretty hard, which delayed him getting into qualifying, which meant he didn't get to qualify.
Yeah.
And after I took him off my fantasy team, I saw that and went, okay, I made the right choice. But then he surprised everybody, and he actually made it up to 10th in the race, I believe.
That was in Bahrain.
No, it's in Saudi too.
Oh, in Saudi, yeah, but like...
And then he had the botched pit stop that dropped him right to the back.
He would have still been towards the back anyways. He was only in 10th because he hadn't pitted yet.
Sure.
Yeah, so it was not a point scoring weekend. Like it was, or he probably would have been 15th realistically. Still, there's just something really wrong there. I honestly wonder if they score a point. But anyways, that's for our Saudi discussion. Let's stick to Bahrain. Do you have any notes on Bahrain? Anything you want to talk about that you saw in Bahrain?
I was disturbed by the lack of pace in the V-carbs. That was worrying to me because they seemed exceedingly good in testing and then kind of fell flat. And I went back and I watched the entire race from Daniel Ricciardo's onboard camera. So no commentary, no nothing. Just every single lap, onboard camera with team radio. So obviously he had a bit of contact in the beginning of the race, which dropped him back all the way. After that, he seemed to have an issue. It wasn't very clear as to what the issue was, but he was being told to do a lot of lift and coast on specific parts of the track, so that kind of screwed him. And then because of the contact in the early pit stop, he was on a suboptimal tire. And then when he got back on the softs, that's when he had some pace, and he legitimately did have pace. He was making up close to a second a lap on the cars in front of him until he got to Yuki and Magnussen. And at that point, by the time it all unfolded, there wasn't enough laps to get past Magnussen.
Do you think that was the right call to get him past, to let him go past Yuki? Because I wonder. I understand Yuki's position right there. Like at that time, I don't see why you don't just let Yuki get past Magnussen first.
Because he couldn't. He wasn't getting past him. He had a few laps in that position already to try and get past him. Him and Magnussen were on similar tires, I believe. They were both on hards. Maybe a slight offset in age, but similar conditions. And he was close. He was close the entire time, but he wasn't getting past him. He wasn't getting to the point where he was able to get a nose down the inside. So Daniel being rapid on soft tires, it absolutely 100% made sense to try and get Daniel through. Could they have handled it better? Sure. And Daniel came out afterwards and said this himself. It was like, if I had been told, okay, we're going to let you through, and last lap, if you're not past them, give it back to Yuki, you would have given it back to Yuki. We've seen that happen before, and I have no reason to doubt that he would have done that if he was told. But you didn't have a lot of laps left. You wanted to try and use all that to get past Magnussen. And ultimately, there were no points to be had by that one position.
Yeah.
So it really shouldn't have boiled over as much as it did.
I wonder if it did, or if that was just a function of the media trying to make something of it, because there was nothing much else to talk about in Bahrain.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So obviously Yuki was pissed. Yuki was pissed because he did some stupid things on track that, frankly, if I was the team principal, even if France Toast was still there, I think he would have taken him aside and smacked him a bit for doing that fucking move at the end of the race.
Oh, at the cool down lap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was silly.
But that was as heated as it got. I really don't think it was anywhere near what the media made it out to be. Like some of the headlines I was reading is just fucking stupid.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the media come Saudi Arabia. But yeah, that's so V-carb. You don't think they're anywhere near their target, or is this just maybe just too early to call?
I think it's early. It has been a disappointing 2 races, and it's easy to get let down and want to dump them, but I think this is, let's say, typical of that team. They don't come out of the gate really good, and then they kind of make it up on the backside of the season. So let's hope. Unfortunately, I think if it doesn't improve, Daniel might just be done.
That's sad. Yeah, I've been thinking that too. This is really his make or break season. He's not, by the looks of it, grasping it with both hands, right? But you're saying he had an issue in Bahrain. Did he have an issue in Saudi Arabia? Did he have some sort of problem, or was it just they just couldn't figure it out that weekend, maybe? Or
he did have a long pit stop.
That's right.
So he came in under the safety car. And they didn't show this on the coverage as far as I saw, but he spent close to a minute in the pits.
God damn. Yeah, that
behind the safety car.
That was not mentioned once in the broadcast of Sky.
Right.
Yeah.
And then later in the race, he took too much curb and ended up spinning, and that dropped him back even further. So on a one-stop race where you go onto a hard tire, you're kind of screwed. That being said, I was kind of hoping for more. You know, he gained a couple positions late in the race because Sauber's fuck ups and whatever else. But yeah, I hope he catches up.
Yeah, not getting past Sargent, I think for what 15 laps was very disheartening.
Hard to watch.
Yeah, that was unbelievable to see because it was that DRS change that you thought, okay, he's going to get past Sargent, he's going to start attacking, maybe potentially get some points, and then just pooped his pants, it seemed like. And it just couldn't get it right.
And it has to be said, like, okay, you can do a little bit of passing in Saudi Arabia, but not much. And the risk versus reward is highly one-sided towards the risk on that track. Like, I think it's just one of these, unless you've got a real clear shot at it, it's not happening.
And not to invoke Mick Schumacher's name, but like I feel like the way he was handled gave a message to all the new drivers, and Daniel is kind of a new driver in a sense because he has something new to prove. That if you've crashed the car, if you go for it, you're not, and you make a mistake, you're not going to be, you're going to be in everybody's shit list.
I disagree. I think from Daniel's side, it's more of a maturity thing. We talked about this in the last episode where he was 2 different people, like the person he was at Red Bull and the person he was at McLaren. If this was McLaren, you'd be absolutely right. He's not the same person. If he crashes the car, they're going to dump him. And ultimately they did.
Yeah.
But I think now that he's in a car, in a team where he's more comfortable, he's not making moves like that because he realizes they can't be made. He knows what the car is. He knows what the situation is. He's not going to try and put one down the inside of Magnussen or an inexperienced driver like Sargent,
who may not know how to handle that situation. Yeah,
and end up buried in a wall somewhere.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I was just making the point too because we're going to talk about this more with rookies in the sense that a lot of them I think are chilled, like they're not making those, they're not taking those chances because they've been shown what happens if you do and you fuck up. Like you don't see, you see a lot of them go for more steadiness instead of chance taking, except unless you're Lance Stroll, who was a perennial rookie.
It's not fair, but but that is something that I think the rookies need to figure out, because if you're not going to take the risk, you're not going to be any good.
You're not going to be a champion.
Like, Logan gets around the track, but I think maybe I've seen one decent overtake from Sargent.
Yeah. You're talking like 2 years. Like
Yeah.
Yeah. Not just
Yeah.
a season, yeah.
Yeah, he gets past people, but he's got more speed down a straight, or it's a wide open corner and he can go around the outside.
Uses DRS, yeah.
Yeah, he's not trying the audacious moves that we see from the better drivers, right?
Ricardo made his name being audacious,
Right.
right? Like, anyways.
That's why he's got the nickname of the Honey Badger.
Want to explain that for our listeners?
Well, honey badgers are just batshit crazy. They're ferocious little fucks that go after everything. So
I was going to say a history lesson, but okay. Anyways, moving on. I have a few more points. Do you have any more points you want to bring up?
I mean, other than the fact that maybe we don't televise Bahrain from now on, because it really wasn't that interesting.
No, the first two, like the Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, are not exciting. I'm not a fan of Qatar either. I talked about this in my therapy episode. Like the Gulf races are just all boring, man. And I guess I know you have a soft spot for Baku. I'm not too crazy about Baku. Just a lot of those races, those street races, these. I don't know. I don't know how to say this. It's just a lot of these like street race golf courses. They're just not exciting. They're very simple strategy. Like there's not enjoyable to watch. There's a lot of like whoever gets pole wins. Like I don't know what we do with that.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to say what I really think here.
I think you're not wrong. Have you seen the images of the new purpose-built Saudi track that they're looking at?
Oh, the one that looks like the Rainbow Road?
Yeah. That's just a prime example of them having far too much money and no brain, but I would rather stay where we are than race there. It's too over the top.
Yeah, but that's what a lot of these street races are, these Saudi races and the Bahrain, Qatar. There's just a lot of hype, but when it comes down to it, it's just there's nothing really to see.
I would like to see some variety, like especially with Bahrain. Bahrain has the ability to do more than what they have, right? So we're on the GP track now, and that's the track we've been using. But they have the outer loop, which we used in COVID to run back-to-back races.
And the Sakir Grand Prix was very exciting.
For what was the shortest lap in F1 history, I believe.
It's 58 seconds or something?
Is something like that.
Yeah.
And very few turns, obviously. It's basically an F1 style NASCAR track. Right? It's just a loop. But it put on a good race, and it was something new. They have the ability with that track. If you've seen overhead of the entire Bahrain facility, they've got elements of every type of racing within that facility. Now, obviously, we're not going to use the desert track to race F1, but why not use the outer loop as part of the GP track? Who says the GP track has to stay the same every year?
Yeah, and why not alternate? Okay, 2024 this track, do the next one in 2025, and then alternate. Manicourt did that for many years. The French Grand Prix, there was many different layouts.
Yeah,
And then they brought the French Grand Prix recently. I forget where.
Le Castellet.
Yeah. But yeah, you have
Paul Ricard.
Paul Ricard. That's right. Paul Ricard also has a couple of options as well.
Why not? It's basically just a paved flat parking lot. But
I'm not a fan either.
But
I'm just saying there's variety there. Like why not try having variety every now and then? You know, like
Yeah.
it's just
or even like what they did with Germany, where it would alternate between Hockenheim and Nürburgring.
yeah. And then
Right.
my favorite was when Nürburgring was Luxembourg Grand Prix, and then they still had Hockenheim.
Because Nürburgring is very close to Luxembourg.
Mm-hmm. That's how Schumacher got his start in the Schumacher documentary, right? Like, I'm not going to drive for Germany because too much competition, but I will drive for Luxembourg, and I'll definitely get in there. But yeah, I have one more point to make. this wouldn't be a philosophy episode if I didn't shit on Nico Hülkenberg. First race again, wing damage. This time it was his fault. I have a conspiracy theory though. In 2023, I think he was just having a bad race. They said he had wing damage after the first corner. I think it was made up. I think he was just having a bad race. I think they completely made it up I'm just, the only reason I bring this up is because the exact same thing happened 2 years in a row. Nico Hülkenberg gets wing damage on the first couple corners. Last year they said it wasn't his fault. This year was clearly his fault. He hits Lance Stroll and has another bad race, goes backwards. Easiest call of our life. Both of us said he's going backwards in the race. What do you think, Gatsby?
Fantastic development this is.
Gatsby, you dick.
I think he was agreeing with you.
No. Really? I thought he was being sarcastic.
I mean, quite possibly, but do you think he really understands sarcasm?
I wish we had a camera to show everybody how he looks right now. Anyways, Hülkenberg. Okay, I guess we can branch this into our Saudi Grand Prix conversation. We'll branch this in because Hülkenberg is just cannot score points for the life of him unless Kevin Magnussen does something for him. And the last time he scored points in Australia, he was about to come 10th, potentially even 11th, and Magnussen crashes the car. But this time in Saudi Arabia, Kevin Magnussen does him another solid, holding back traffic for easily 20 laps, maybe even more. It might have been 25 laps.
It was the majority of the race, and not just holding back. And this goes again to the layout of Saudi and the risk versus reward. I don't know that a lot of people would even want to try passing Kevin if it wasn't Saudi. When we saw it, he got 2 penalties, 2 very heavy penalties for being Kevin, effectively. There was really no precedent for 10-second penalties in there, but he ended up with 20 seconds worth of penalties, which at the time they were given, felt like, yeah, by the end of the race, he will be at the back.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't finish in last place.
Where did he end up finishing?
I'm pretty sure he finished ahead of the Saubers.
Oh, but everybody's going to do that. Yeah, you were talking about before when we were starting up our conversation. Why was there no precedent for Kevin's penalties? Because from my understanding, they've changed the rules. And the rules say now if you pass off the track instead of getting just a 5-second penalty and not pass off the track and not getting it back, instead of getting a 5-second penalty to deter drivers from just taking the chance and dealing with this penalty later, they're giving 10 seconds because 10 seconds is a sizable penalty, especially if you're fighting in the midfield.
Mm-hmm. So just on that note, Kevin Magnussen finished 12th.
No, he didn't.
Yes.
Even after penalties.
Yes.
Did they give Ocon another penalty that we didn't know about?
Quite possibly, but to answer the question, my understanding was the penalties were not for passing off the track and gaining an advantage. The penalties were for dangerous moves, causing a collision, causing an unavoidable collision.
Oh, okay.
So the first one, I believe, was for Albon. Albon tried to pass him, got right up alongside him at the high-speed chicane, and K-Mag went for it anyway and forced Albon into the runoff. They both ended up off track, but he got the penalty for causing a collision because there was contact. The second one was Yuki. Same situation. I'm pretty sure K-Mag took off a wing mirror.
Mm.
And there's no precedent for a 10-second penalty for causing a collision because in all the other similar instances over the last number of years, it's never been more than a 5-second penalty.
Mm.
So I don't know who the driver steward was in Saudi Arabia, but it's clear they've seen Magnussen's career up to this point and they're not putting up with it.
So it's a lifetime achievement award.
Potentially.
For Kevin Magnussen. And that was actually one of the notes I wrote. I said Magnussen got the same penalty for Hamilton nearly killing Verstappen in 2021. If you put it in that perspective. Like, nobody crashed, nobody got hurt, nobody went into the wall. But Magnussen got a 10-second penalty. And same with Lewis Hamilton for almost killing Max Verstappen in 2021 at Silverstone.
That's a good point, because that's an example of causing a collision that ended up in a 10-second penalty. The difference is that resulted in a driver going to the medical center.
At 60G.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of favoritism we know I've talked about before in Formula One, but like that is, if you're gonna give penalties as you insinuated, based on your thoughts on a driver, or based on how the stewards feel in that moment, then at least be consistent in the sense that like you should have given Hamilton maybe a 25-second penalty, disqualification for almost killing somebody, right? Like,
yep.
Because they're just picking and choosing who they like and keeping them on the track or keeping them in the fight in the race. They don't care about Magnussen. They figured Magnussen's probably not going to get points anyways, and he's been an asshole his whole life. Let's give him a deterrent. But I don't think that's fair. That's not consistent. Right? Like, anyways.
I never thought I'd see the day when Nick is on Kevin Magnussen's side for anything.
It's more me taking a swipe at Hamilton. It's more like, clearly this is more me taking a swipe at Hamilton, but for once I'm trying not to be hyperbolic. Right? I'm trying not to be insane. I want to go off about how the media favors him, but I'm not going to. And because you know what, it doesn't seem like he's going to have any big of a season this year. So there's no point. And there's no point rehashing something that happened almost 3 years ago now.
Yeah,
but it's just kind of annoying to see that. Anyways, how come there was no penalty for Norris?
That's a good question.
What's going on there? He clearly jumps the start. Clearly.
Yeah, so there were a number of things, because first it was, okay, it looks like he jumped the start, but also was he in his grid box? Because that's something that last year they were getting really anal about. You have to be in the box.
Mm-hmm. Ocon got like 20 penalties for that one race.
Yeah. So it looks, for all intents and purposes, he was in the box until he rolled forward.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the speculation is he didn't get the penalty because, yes, he moved, but he brought the car to a stop before he continued on, which doesn't sit well with me, because the regulation says that you're not allowed to move while the lights are on.
Yeah.
So if he moved, regardless of if he came to a stop or not, it's a jump start.
Yeah.
So you can say, okay, he started, the lights went out, he stopped, and then he started, so he lost whatever advantage that he gained. But that's not the rule.
No.
Whatever advantage he lost by stopping and starting again should just be compounded by the penalty he gets for jumping the start. These things happen. It's a mistake.
Yeah.
But he needs to be penalized for it.
Yeah, especially if you set the precedent with Ocon last year.
Well, that was about being in the box and not in the box.
I understand. The point I'm trying to make is, like, people get penalties off the line all the time.
Right. And if you want to be really technical about it, he should have got the penalty for jumping, and then he should have got the penalty for being out of the box.
There you go.
After he jumped.
Yeah. So he really got away with one there. And I wonder why that is. Is the FIA signaling that he's the next golden boy? Is he going to be someone that's going to be favored? Or is it just really just... I have no other way to put that. Like, what other possible reason could you have for not giving him that penalty? Like, you and I just talked it out right now. But, like, saying, okay, well, he didn't gain any advantage, but still, that's still two clear penalties, especially if you're being anal to everybody else, which makes no sense to me. Like, I don't know how you can do that, play favoritism for someone. And then what was Perez's penalty? That's what I can't remember. Unsafe release in the pits.
Yeah.
And like there's a friggin' flood of cars in the pits at that point. How come you had no leeway for him? You could make a case for that being like, okay, like when everybody's pitting and double stacking, let's just lay off on the penalties because a lot of fuckery is going to happen. And yeah, so I don't know, like that they just basically signal to the world that who we like gets off scot-free, and who we don't like gets pushed out of form, like gets a needless penalty. Perez got a penalty. They finally gave Yuki Tsunoda a penalty for an unsafe release, but that was before the race. Like, who cares?
Well, whether it's before the race or not, it's still unsafe. And that one was legitimately Yuki's fault. So usually in instances like that where it's before the race, they'll fine the team.
Yeah. Or maybe penalty points for Yuki, yeah.
But it's pretty clear on the video when you watch it, the mechanic that was waving him out told him to stop and he kept going.
Okay,
So
but
that's on Yuki. I think he deserved that one.
But not for the race. Maybe penalty points. Because you're basically saying before the race has even started, when you're just coming out of the garage, the race is on. Like, mistakes happen. Like let's wait till the lights go out before we start handing penalties. Like, this is an overreach by an organization that is becoming more and more irrelevant, in my opinion. They're just trying to micromanage everything.
Oh, I'll argue it. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I'll argue it on the grounds of if they don't take a hard stance on this, then you get into the fuckery that's been going on in the last little while with people jumping cars in the pits and all this other shit. We saw it in Abu Dhabi last year, I believe, where Max passed however many cars in the tunnel.
Yeah, but that was in practice or was qualifying.
But it doesn't matter if you take a hard stance on stuff like that and start penalizing people in the race. Like we saw it with Lewis Hamilton when he did a practice start in the wrong spot. Brazil, I want to say. Maybe not. Might get that wrong. They penalized him on track during the race because of how unsafe it is. Right? You have to take a hard stance, because if you let somebody get away with it because it's not in the race yet, the race isn't on, it's to the grid, who cares? Shit's going to happen and someone's going to get hurt.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, maybe just a talking to, maybe, or use the penalty points for what they're for.
You know how many reprimands Sebastian Vettel got over his career? Did that ever change his attitude to anything?
That's what we love. That's what I loved about him. That was the only thing I loved about him.
Right. So what you love about him is the fact that a stern talking to doesn't change him.
That's why then I added the penalty points.
The penalty points do fuck all. Look at Pierre Gasly. I'm pretty sure he's perpetually been on the verge of losing his license his entire career.
Yeah, but enforce that and don't ruin the races, or like this is the whole thing we talked about with track limits. How track limits always pisses me off. Like, you don't always gain an advantage. Just sometimes it's a good line for that particular driver. Why, if they went off on the line, who cares? Like, who cares if they're coloring outside the line, so to speak? They're finding their own norm. Why do you need to micromanage everything in the race? Because you want to control the race. Let the drivers figure this out. And if they, okay, I can see your mind going in a million ways, so I just want to make my point really clear. If they're making things unsafe, if they're harming people, yes, give harsher penalties. But if they're going off the track, or they're doing little things like the unsafe release in the pits when there's a million cars, if they're doing things that like cause big damage, then you give harsher penalties. Don't micromanage small 5-second penalties as deterrents because you want to control everything.
So what I'm hearing from that is you just want this to go full Mad Max.
It wasn't Mad Max in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. It was great racing.
Yeah, but you had a lot more tracks with gravel traps and sand pits and everything else that legitimately deterred that. We've gone away from that on a lot of tracks because of MotoGP. A gravel trap will legitimately kill a MotoGP rider. Because if they go off into a gravel trap, the bike sinks down and they go over, right? That's part of the reason we've gotten rid of a lot of those physical deterrents, because you want more than just one series to race there. But that being said, you've got to do something more than you're doing. If you don't want the driver to leave the track, And you can't say, oh, let them color outside the lines, because where do you stop?
Like I said, you don't unless they've caused a major accident.
But if I'm in qualifying and there's no one around me and I cut a corner and I gain 2 seconds, I haven't caused a major accident. I haven't done anything unsafe. Do I deserve that lap that's 2 seconds faster?
Not if you're cutting complete parts of the track. I'm talking like the car is like 5 millimeters over the line, one tire, and they get a 5-second penalty or a deleted lap time.
It's not one tire. It's all 4. That's the rule.
Even still, like
No.
if it like millimeters over these lines should not matter.
But that's the difference in apex speed. You have to stay on the track. And to stay on the track, you have to have a millimeter, minimal parts of your tire, one tire, not even all 4, on the track. If all 4 tires go off, you've taken the corner too fast. And they don't enforce this everywhere. It's not every corner. It's corners where you can legitimately gain an advantage. And what that is you go into a corner too fast. You legitimately can't make it. Right? The car swings out wide. You're able to have a higher apex speed, which then takes time off of your lap time. That's gaining an advantage. If I do that, but everybody else is following this, I gain an advantage. Do I deserve that advantage? No, because everybody else is following the rules and you're not. One thing you can say is, okay, if that's truly the faster line, why not make the track faster? Why not open that line to allow, or that corner to allow for that line? Where do you stop?
Like I said, you don't. You don't unless it's bad, unless it's really bad.
This is the same reasoning, or this is the same idea behind, let's not ban performance-enhancing drugs. Let's just give people all the steroids and see how high a human being can truly jump.
But okay, so some of those corners, you won't always gain an advantage. Like especially if it doesn't, if it's part of the racing line. Like if it's not part of the racing line, right?
But that's the point. They don't enforce it in every corner. They are only enforcing it at corners where you legitimately gain an advantage. The final turn in Austria, you gain a massive advantage by running off into the runoff,
or even onto the grass. That was actually the point I was about to make. Like, but it made for good racing, good qualifying. You could get advantages by having a worse car, and all the cars did it, and like it was fine. Like go look at Austria qualifying 2002. Raikkonen's on the grass half the time. I think that was better racing.
I don't, because sure, you can say the car is fast, they're in control of the car, they're finding a faster way around the track. Sure, but they're off the track. They're no longer on the track. That's the key point. You're not on the track, so therefore it shouldn't count. I think the FIA is also wrong in the sense that they need to have some balls. They need to do something to make it a proper deterrent. And this nonsense of having everybody qualify and then get their laps deleted 5 minutes after the session ends, and you don't know what the fuck's going on, that's not committing to it. They need to do something that's legitimately going to damage a lap time if they leave the track. Now, they've tried that, and I think it's been a real half-assed attempt at trying it, with sausage curbs and things like that. Those have caused more injury than anything else. But they need to find a solution. And, I mean, we go to street tracks where they tear up city centers to put a racetrack in there. You're telling me they can't come up with a solution to put gravel down for F1 weekends and pull it up for MotoGP? There's something you can do. And I'm with you in the sense that if they're not going to police it properly, if they're not going to make a proper attempt to fix the problem, then just open up the fucking track. Let them take it. Then you'll get to a point where you keep opening it up to let them take faster and faster lines, so it's just a straight drag. But
like, especially like you said on street tracks, you have natural deterrents there. You have walls. Right? So this is more a discussion, I guess, for circuits.
yes.
And yeah, I just don't know. I don't see the problem with going outside the lines every now and then. I don't. like you said, yeah, if you cut a corner, yeah, that's a penalty, or that's at least a deleted lap time. If you cut a corner too many times, and I essentially mean like the runoffs that aren't part of the track. You can't do that every time. But like your tires are millimeters over the lines. Who gives a fuck? Like, why are they policing every last damn thing? And so we got a little off topic because we were just talking about penalties, but it went into a broader discussion about the FIA. But yeah, I just think they're micromanaging everything with track limits, which we talked about, but also the penalties. They're just micromanaging and deciding who they want to give a penalty to in that moment, and whoever's popular, like Norris, gets off scot-free.
Yeah, I mean, that brings us to another thing that's topical in the F1 news right now with the investigation into Ben Suleiman and his potential race fixing in last year's Saudi Arabia race. All right, but it just goes to the point of, is the FIA relevant in its current form? And if they're making that type of decision and they don't have the continuity in decision making at the race level, and it's supported and enforced by people like the current president who are, say, dubious at best, maybe it is time for F1 to break away from the FIA.
How long have they been with the FIA? Is this a recent thing, or is this something that's been in our lifetime?
No, so I think the official F1 World Championship started in the 50s, and that was the beginning with the FIA. As far as I know, they've been part of the FIA or been involved with the FIA since the beginning of the championship. F1 existed before the championship did, but it was less organized. It was more compartmentalized into local races.
It was more the teams, an amalgamation of teams, if I'm not mistaken.
Not even. It was basically you had a loose regulation of car, and whoever wanted to host a race just kind of went, hey, F1, come race here, and teams would show up. Right? So there wasn't a consolidated championship around it. When they started that organizing, I believe it was the FIA, or at least early versions of the FIA.
But now what? The 10 teams think they can just leave the FIA and do it all themselves?
Well, that was the big talk in 2009. And they've had chats on and off about that at different periods. And it's effectively why we have F1 management and the FIA as separate entities. Because Ecclestone convinced the FIA to sell the commercial rights of F1 to himself.
Oh, so he basically made a giant power play then?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's Max Mosley and Bernie Ecclestone. When Max was running the FIA and Bernie was running F1, that was the little buddy-buddy deal that they made. Bernie got F1, the commercial rights to F1. He paid some stupidly low amount for it for a lease of 99 years.
Oh, wow.
And that's effectively what Liberty now has, is Ecclestone transferred that ownership to Liberty, or Liberty bought it from him.
Mosley lost the FIA in a scandal, I'm assuming.
I don't know that he did. The FIA presidency is an elected position.
Oh, okay.
I think that scandal came out and then he didn't get elected again.
That's fair. And then Ecclestone, he was forced to sell his rights. If I'm not mistaken, something happened there.
Yeah, so F1 has had a number of owners. Bernie has been part of it for a long time, but basically it was owned by, I believe they were CVC investors. And they held the majority share, and then ultimately Liberty came along and offered them money for it.
And took it away from him.
Took it away. But Bernie was part of that, and Liberty kind of promised that he'd be involved, and then very promptly revoked that.
He, in my opinion, oversaw the best and worst years of Formula One. And I wonder what year he came in, because he oversaw the 90s and the early 2000s, but then he started tinkering. He was the original tinkerer. Like, I like him, but he was the person who originally trying to fuck with all the rules and the regulations to get a result he wanted. And yeah, he was the greatest leader and the worst leader at the same time. It was one of those weird things. Anyway, sorry. Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that's it. We're off topic here.
Yeah, it's okay. This is part of our discussions. Okay, I have a lot of notes. Before we get into the elephant in the room, I want to talk about some other things. To me, Piastri was driver of the day in Saudi Arabia. Now, it's only his second year there. Only like second year in this McLaren. Outshines Norris, outqualifies him, had a fantastic weekend. Would have done the same, I think, last year. And I think he just consistently made his way up to fourth in a McLaren that wasn't really that good. I think he probably could have got a podium if they... I don't know what the hell's wrong with McLaren's DRS that they're only getting 4 kilometers an hour on straightaways where everybody else is getting 16. That's a big problem because he should have gotten past Hamilton a long time ago. Probably, to me, would have probably caught Leclerc.
Yeah, and that, frankly, I don't think that's a good sign for McLaren this year. It's not going to be the same at every track. Their DRS is going to work better elsewhere, but what it tells me, and this is just from a very high-level look at it, it looks like they stripped a lot of downforce off the car to make it a high-speed car, so that opening that rear wing didn't actually reduce a lot of drag. It seems like they tried to take as much drag out of it as possible, so it probably had a very small rear wing on it, not a lot of drag to begin with, not a lot of downforce, which then meant when you opened it, you weren't ditching a lot. Like, the Red Bull DRS has been extremely effective because the car is very efficient. It's got a very efficient aero platform so that whenever you open that wing, it just dumps everything it can because it doesn't need it.
And like you said before, it's not necessarily a high drag car that can absorb a lot of drag with the drag reduction system, but like that's sorry.
So that to me looks a little ominous and might explain why Norris had a bit of a time with it this weekend, because if it didn't have a lot of downforce because they stripped all the downforce off of it, might not be looking good for McLaren this year.
Is it something they can fix, or is that big engineering upheaval?
It depends on what they've done. I haven't paid too much attention. The car doesn't look too different from last year. So maybe it's just this track. Maybe the car is not great in high speed. I vaguely remember something about that last year. Like, they didn't do too well at Monza, I don't believe.
No.
So it could just be that they've gone the opposite of the Williams route, where instead of having a car that'll score on 2 or 3 tracks, they want a car that'll score on 21. Right?
So hopefully, I hope they get it together, but then at the same time, I hope they don't get it together too well because I predicted them third. My other driver of the day was Perez, which nobody's talking about, really. Like, instead, I just see interviews with Horner saying, oh, I have an open seat in 2025, just basically, once again, like we've already talked about, writing him off. He's done. They're just not saying it yet. They're just not saying it yet officially. But he got within 6 seconds of Max compared to 31 in Bahrain.
Yeah.
Had a good race, got up to second, qualified third. He did everything you asked him to do.
Yes. And this is... It's early. We have to preface that. This happened last year as well. Mm-hmm. He was winning races at this point last year.
He won Saudi Arabia last year.
Right. So, I agree with you. He's doing what he needs to do. If he keeps it up, there's nobody else for that seat.
No.
If he keeps it up, why wouldn't he have it? I don't care. Like, I love Daniel Ricciardo. He doesn't deserve that seat in the current state of play.
Based on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that changes, if Daniel starts scoring points in that car and Sergio starts fighting with Danny on track, then we can talk about it. But frankly, at this point, Sergio's got it my number one pick for that seat. Second would be Yuki. He's had better races than Danny.
Yeah, but I don't...
'Cause the only other option is Liam, and Liam's not ready for it.
Or Carlos Sainz, or just someone out of left field. Red Bull is finishing school. Does it have to be in the Red Bull program? They got Perez.
They got Perez, and that was abnormal.
And it worked.
It did. And I guess Carlos is an option for them. I don't know that that's the right choice. Because he's going to want to fight Max.
Yeah. I completely agree with you there. Yeah, it's not necessarily the best option or the right choice, but it is an option. We have to get bad ideas out there too, right? We have to say not just good ideas. We also have to say all ideas here.
Okay, so we'll get the idea out there now then that Logan is going to Red Bull 2025.
That's Danny Kvyat.
Kvyat.
2025. Comes back miraculously. Who else we got here? Nicholas Latifi. Goat Tifi in the goat car.
He's getting his MBA, is he not?
What a loser.
He's going to be a team principal.
Why? Go to Indy. Drive in Indy. Everybody would love you in Indy. You weren't as bad as Sargent. You were capable in some sense. Anyways. Yeah, I think all the pressure's off Perez this year. So I think you will see some more consistency, but I doubt you'll see more than based on these two races, based on the way he's acted, based on the way he's been racing. I doubt you'll see more than a win or two. I think 2 would be pushing it again.
I don't think you'll see any wins with Perez.
Wow.
I think it's going to be 24 wins for Max Verstappen and 24 second places for Perez at this rate.
At this rate, yeah. But
again, it's early, and that's a ridiculous claim to make, but...
you can never judge early, because I remember Ferrari in 2022, we all thought it was over. We thought, just Leclerc is going to coast to this title. And I astutely said to you, do not underestimate this team's desire to lose. And I'm very proud of that comment, because it was very true. Anyways, why did I write in my notes that Alonso's not happy? It's because maybe he doesn't seem as happy as he did before. He's not talking on the radio as much. I think he knows the car isn't as good. Because you think there would have been more hype around his 5th place, right? Or we've just come to accustomed to the Aston Martin getting there?
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. They started last year so strong. They finished last year relatively strong. And this year hasn't been anything. And this is a result of the convergence. So as these teams get closer and closer together, they're all developing to the same target, right? They're all going to converge to the same level of performance. None of them are going to get to the level of performance that Red Bull has, which is unfortunate, but that's the case. So they're all going to come together, and I think that's what we're seeing. Mercedes looks bad, sure, right now. Ferrari is up and down. Aston Martin's in there, McLaren's in there. Okay, that's your top 10, really. It's anybody's game, and that's the scary part. Like, there is no clear 1, 2, 3 at this point. There's a clear 1.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5. Anybody's guess. And frankly, I think it's going to make for a great season as long as these guys can stay close to each other. If it keeps up this way where you get the top, let's say 3 to 10 within a second, 2 seconds of each other, it's going to be an exciting season. If they start spreading out and you routinely have Mercedes 2, 3, Ferrari 4, 5, yeah, it's not going to be great, but we'll see. I think as they converge closer together, we're going to see there's no clear winner, and then we'll get to the end of the season, and it'll be a lot more of those talking points of who's P2, who's P3, who's P4 in the constructors.
Make our predictions a lot harder, too.
Yeah.
And I think Ferrari is to me, based on these races, the clear number 2. Especially because both drivers have a lot to prove. I wonder how much this surgery is going to affect Carlos the rest of the season.
No, I think he'll be fine.
I hope so too. But like we said, like we talked about this with Stroll last year in the last race, momentum is everything.
Yeah, and the same thing with Danny, right? The difference is they broke their hands, wrists, hands, toe, all of it, right? Those are parts of the body they're actively using to control the car. Those cars don't have power steering, don't have proper power steering. The brake pedal, you physically have to stand on it to get the car to stop, right? If any part of you hurts that interacts with those parts of the car, it's going to be harder for you to do your job. Now, they have to be fit, and Carlos has had his abdomen cut open to remove part of him, so that's going to have an impact, sure. But he's got a couple of weeks, right? He wasn't in the car for race day. He's got a week before the next race weekend. He'll come back and he'll be fine. Albon did fine after the same surgery. Mind you, I think he missed an extra race because he almost died during the procedure.
Yeah, I remember that.
But he'll be fine. Oddly enough, his father had the same thing happen to him.
Carlos Sainz Sr.
Yes. Had his appendix removed and missed a race, and they actually posted a funny meme about that.
Yeah. Was it like 19 whatever, 70s or something?
It was a picture of Carlos Sainz Sr. on the phone next to Junior in the hospital bed, and a picture, the same picture of Carlos Sainz Sr. and his manager in the hospital when he had it done.
It's pretty funny. We should meme that and put our faces in it. What else we got here? K-Mag replaced mid-season.
No.
No?
Not happening.
Because brings me to my next point, which I think we'll finish the podcast on. The hype's on Bearman now. The hype is on Bearman, and in typical Nick fashion, I'm going against the grain. It's for no fucking reason. He has been overvalued and anointed already before anything happens. Before the race even happened, he was anointed as the next Jesus Christ of Formula One. In my opinion, the way they were talking about it, you could hear it on the Sky Sports announcements. Qualifies 11th. He goes, oh, he's only 0.3 off of Hamilton. Yeah, in a Ferrari, that's better. Sure. I understand it's Lewis Hamilton. I understand this is his first time in the Formula One car. If he is as good as you all say he is, he should have at least gotten to the top 10.
But do you understand what 0.3 is?
It's not much, but it's also a lot at the same time.
Yeah, sure. On track, it's a lot because you're looking at numbers and you go, oh, he's 0.3 off. 0.3 is fuck all.
He's been racing his whole life.
Not in Formula One.
But still.
So you have to give the kid some credit. He had an hour's worth of testing, jump into qualifying. He's never raced that car. He's never been in that car. Robert Schwartzman has done all the test sessions for Ferrari. Where was Robert Schwartzman? Not there. I don't know where the fuck he is now. Probably back in Maranello in the simulator.
Why didn't they call up Schwartzman?
Bearman was there. Bearman's a Ferrari driver, and he was there for F2. Schwartzman was probably in Maranello on the simulator.
Or Giovinazzi, too.
He was probably in Qatar with the LMP car. Which, frankly, I think he's doing better there than anybody's doing in Ferrari and F1 right now.
Yeah, well, he but also to say he was never that good in Formula One either, Giovinazzi. So calling him back was kind of, I think, would have been as underwhelming as Bearman was, in my opinion. He would have been as underwhelming. I don't know. The way they talked about him, like I said, I just get so sick of this with the media, and I'm going to try not to say what I texted you that whole weekend, which was definitely X-rated. But
yeah, thanks for that, by the way.
It's just the way they talk about him. He could do no wrong. He could do no wrong. Why not just give him a proper analysis?
No, but at the same time, he couldn't do wrong. You can't expect much from the guy.
But he's in a great Ferrari. He's in the second best car. I just think any other driver put in that position, they would have expected a lot more from. If that was Nick De Vries, if that was Mick Schumacher, if that was Logan Sargent, if that was anybody else having to step into that better car, they would have expected a lot more. They wouldn't have been okay with what he did.
Right. So everybody that you've mentioned there, except for Nick De Vries, had F1 experience. Right? Someone with F1 experience jumping into that car, yeah, absolutely. You want to expect that they'll do a lot better. Nick De Vries, okay, didn't have F1 experience, but was a multiple world champion in other racing series. Bearman was just an F2 driver. And frankly, not a very good one. I'm not very impressed with his career. Especially not impressed with the start of this year's season.
He's behind Antonelli. Yeah, I was going to get into that.
And Antonelli's not doing well.
No.
Frankly, whatever happened at Prema, they shit the bed this year with the new F2 car.
I'll give this to Bearman. He did get pole for the Saudi sprint race. He was on pole.
Sure.
Technically, but I think it means nothing, and I think the other drivers would have done
pole for the sprint race?
Yeah.
So that's reverse grid pole.
Oh, so he would have started last?
He would have started 10th.
Oh.
So, yeah. Qualifying first for the sprint doesn't mean a whole lot because it's 10th place.
Oh, okay. So not everybody's going for it is what you're saying. Okay. Like not everybody is trying necessarily to get pole.
Well, no, there's one qualifying. So you qualify for sprint and the feature race at the same time. If you qualify first, you start the feature race in first. But the sprint race, they do reverse grid, so 1 to 10 swap places. So if you qualify pole, you start in 10th. If you qualify 10th, you start in first. So the whole grid changes, which frankly I think is something they should do for F1, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah, actually I was very against that for F1 because I thought last would be first.
Yeah,
but
no,
actually,
that's too much.
But 10, that actually does kind of make it pretty cool.
Because then you can't target it. If it's last, then you go, okay, well, I'm going to go out and putter around at the maximum lap time. And then you get a shit show of clown cars running around.
Oh, okay. So that actually makes sense. So they still have Q1, Q2, Q3, I guess, for F2.
No, their qualifying is different. It's basically a free-for-all.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Anyways, just the whole point I'm trying to make with Bearman is just I don't necessarily see it with him. Like, yeah, we're talking about his junior career. Yeah, he jumps into a Formula One car, but it's a good Formula One car.
Right. And I'm not trying to jump on the bandwagon of Bearman is the next Michael Schumacher. No, he's not. Like, I posted in our stories, he has some Maldonado tendencies in him. And the performance this year has been abysmal. But they are hyping him this year even before he jumped into the F1 car. I don't know why. Nothing's there to prove it.
Yeah, when his testing in some point in 2023, I think it was before Abu Dhabi.
With Haas.
Yeah. And they said, he's 3/10 behind or 2/10 behind K-Mag. And it's like, that's not a good standard.
No, it's not.
Like, you're setting this kid up for failure. And I feel like the media's trying to get him into Formula One instead of actually basing it on his merits.
Right. And what I'm trying to say here is you have to give him some credit because he came in, yes, he's in a good car. But if he wasn't half decent, he wouldn't have made Q2.
In the second fastest car?
No, if he wasn't half decent, he wouldn't have been able to control that car. All right, this is the same thing we see from people like Logan Sargent. Sorry, Mick Schumacher. You come in, you're not comfortable, you don't know what's going on yet, and if you push too hard, you bin it. And that was one of my predictions for Bearman during the race, that he would biff it. And he didn't. And I'll give him credit for that. Just the fact that he was able to see out the race and not get involved in anything and do exactly what he was told to do by the team principal. Basically, just go out there and don't fuck it up. And he scored points.
How many therapy episodes do I have to have talking about the shitty point system? the overvaluing of drivers of how consistency means nothing. Yeah, you kept on the track. That's good.
You can't say consistency because he's only had one race.
I'm making a broader point in the sense that we're not getting a good sense of what actual good drivers are. And this is another instance of that. That's why I think I'm going off.
Yeah.
Because I think it's giving me my bias of everything I've been saying. And we're seeing it with Bearman. We're overvaluing someone who, in real terms, didn't do anything special. By every metric, the car was better than seventh place.
And I agree with you. He did not do anything special. That car with a proper driver should have been higher in the points. Absolutely. But you have to give the kid some credit. He went from expecting to race the guys he's been racing for 2 years now, or a year and 2 races, whatever it is, in a car that he's tested in, that he's practiced in, that he's done everything in, to being told, hey, here's a red racing suit, go sit in that big car and drive real fast around a circuit that you've never driven hardware like this around. To quote Danica Patrick, he was probably shitting his pants. And he probably was. And you know what? He didn't biff it. He didn't destroy the $20 million car or whatever the fuck they cost these days.
But should we value steadiness?
Yes.
I don't think so, because it just creates an average driver. But like I said, they're anointing him as if he's got this great, amazing future. And I told you this off air, so I'll say it again. Eddie Jordan went as far as to say that Sainz should be careful, like should look behind his back for his 2025 seat, because someone like Bearman might say this, might steal it.
Yeah, and frankly, I hope he does. Not because Bearman deserves it, but because we need fucking rookies out there.
You want to just anoint this kid, hype him up, and then take away a race winner out of Formula One?
Yes.
Like the people who I want gone are the ones who are just amounting to nothing, like Zhou Guanyu, Yuki Tsunoda, Logan Sargent, and I know he's won 10 races, but Bottas has just decided he's done with his career. Those are the people I want gone, not Carlos Sainz.
Get rid of them all. Get rid of them all.
That's a bold statement. I like it.
All the people you just mentioned. Get rid of them. Don't get me wrong. I like Sainz. I want him to have a career because I think he legitimately has some skill and he's a great personality to have there. But if he can't find a seat because someone decides to take a rookie, because I'm sure Carlos isn't cheap these days. I'm sure his contracts are pretty large. So if someone says, well, we've got a shit ton of rookies that are coming up that look good, Zane Maloney,
well,
he's been extremely impressive.
Well, I want to talk about that too. I bet you Bearman gets a seat before Maloney does. I think Maloney will rot away in this junior program.
Of course, because he's a Sauber junior driver and they have nowhere to put him.
Exactly, yeah. That, and two, they don't have any need for the boy from Barbados, but they do have a need for an Englishman. They always do.
Exactly.
There would be 20 English drivers if Sky Sports and F1.com had their way.
Yes.
And that's the point I'm getting at. I think like they overvalued this guy for all the wrong reasons. And that is another one. Because you're right. Like, why is nobody talking about Zane Maloney, like, absolutely crushing F2 in the spec series? And thank you I wanted to say this on here, for getting me onto F2, because I've always avoided it, but watching it this year has been a lot of fun.
It's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like Zane Maloney's year last year wasn't phenomenal, but I went back and I looked at his career, and he is truly one of the decent talents. And in Bahrain, he did amazing. Won both races and didn't start on pole in either race.
Yeah.
Did most of his passing on track. Gained, I want to say, 11 positions this weekend.
In the Saudi Arabia, 15th to 4th, yeah.
Yeah. One of those was because of a penalty, but either way, it's a legitimate gain. The kid can overtake in a spec series the same cars on the same track, the only thing that changes there is the engineer and whatever adjustable setup parameters you have. So either him and his engineer know what they're doing, or he is a phenomenal driver.
Could be both. It could be both, right? Like, because great drivers have great teams around them. Like Schumacher had great engineers around him too. Verstappen has great engineers around him. Like,
Yeah. So I'll put it out there. I'm just going to put it out there. Not that I think it's going to happen, but I'll put it out there into the universe and see what comes of it. Zane Maloney, Red Bull 2025.
bad ideas count too. Bad ideas count too. It makes sense if Sauber, if they want to rekindle their relationship as the junior team, Zhou's clearly going nowhere. Why not put Zane Maloney in that car?
Give Liam Lawson a fucking aneurysm.
Oh, why is that?
Because Liam's hoping for that seat.
He's hoping for Sauber?
No, for Red Bull.
Oh, no. I'm saying Zane Maloney realistically should go to Sauber.
Yes.
But you're right. Lawson, like you said last week, has a little bit of a Gasly streak in him, and that he thinks he should make the jump up to the top team. I don't think so. But yeah. But yeah, my problem. You're right. Hashing this out with you. This is why I love talking with you, because often I will just calm down towards the end of our conversations. Yeah, Bearman wasn't necessarily bad, and I have to acknowledge that. But he wasn't what Sky Sports made him out to be that I watched. Not even kind of close. And like I said in my first ever, I think, or second ever therapy episode, the blowjob they gave Kevin Magnussen was paled nothing in comparison to what they let Oliver Bearman do to Sky Sports. Sky Sports, you dirty whore, what you let Oliver Bearman do to you on camera. Whereas Kevin...
Unless I'm very much mistaken.
I thought we weren't going to go there.
You're right. But I just had to get it. Like, I just had to kind of sneak it in there, you know? All right. Before we get X-rated, what else do you want to talk about from Saudi Arabia? Is there anything else on your mind? Oh, well, can I bring up one more conspiracy theory? Because I brought up one earlier. Charles Leclerc's Q3 lap time was slower than his Q2 lap time. He would have got pole if his Q2 lap time held true. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't, but I'm not surprised.
Why is that?
He's not very good.
No, well, it has nothing to do with Leclerc. It wouldn't surprise me if he screwed up not getting pole to help Bearman's reputation. Because if the Ferrari was the fastest car in qualifying that weekend, it would have made Bearman look even worse, in my opinion. Conspiracy theory that I want to get out there.
No, I don't buy it.
All right.
I think Charles's ego is too big to do that, and I just think it's a lack of consistency from him. He's spectacular over one lap. He's very quick, but I don't think he's consistent over multiple attempts at one lap.
So he has to hope that his best lap is his last.
Yeah, or keep going out to try and best it, right? Like, he can do it, but it's not a guaranteed. Like, Max Verstappen, we've seen it, feels like hundreds of times now. He goes out there and goes, what's the fastest lap? Oh, well, it's this, but don't go for it. He goes, oh, okay, beats it by a second. Like, how many times did he put fastest laps in Saudi Arabia that were over a second faster?
We lost count. I can't even remember.
It's absolutely insane what he was doing. And Leclerc is fast, and he can be fast over one lap, and he's got a history of getting pole by the smallest margin over Max Verstappen. So we know he can do it, but he's not consistent enough to do it.
No. That was apparently Häkkinen's problem, too.
Again, with the fins.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to do it at the beginning of the episode. I wanted to do my public apology to the Finnish people. I guess we can do it now. I don't hate Finnish people. It was really funny to see Mika Häkkinen cry in Monza. I don't want to actually see it again. I like Raikkonen. I don't know why you got the idea that I hate Raikkonen. I've always liked Raikkonen. I just thought he was lazy. He was a lot lazier than he should have been. He would have been a lot better if he wasn't lazy.
This doesn't sound like an apology.
I'm just clarifying my statements because you went off on this in Therapist. Not off, but like you were just saying, what is your problem with the Finns? Well, I don't hardly have them. I just don't think Bottas, like, what's going on with him? Listen, Finland, you have great drivers. See? Apology. Sort of.
That's a statement. That's not an apology. What are your thoughts on Heikki Kovalainen?
He was pretty good. He was pretty consistent. But like consistent podium finisher. Not consistent Nico Hulkenberg stuff. And he had it, and the McLaren wasn't always good when he was there. He was decent. So was Bottas. Bottas was decent. It's just him and Raikkonen decided we don't care at a certain point. And Mika Hakkinen, to me, like, Michael Schumacher broke his spine, and it was very fun to watch. He broke him. Hakkinen retired midway through the 2001 season because he's just like, I can't keep up with him. Like, he was heartbroken. It was just fun to watch. It was fun to watch. But anyways, listen, Finland, I love you. I want to go visit your country one day. I mean, a lot of cool things to see there. I'd love to drive one of your go-kart tracks. Actually, I shouldn't be driving the rally tracks. I'll just crash. That's the toughest driving in the world. Those are some of the best drivers in the world. The Finnish rally drivers. Arguably better than Formula One drivers. Coulthard said that too.
So what I'm hearing here is you just want all the Finnish F1 drivers to go race rallies.
That's what Raikkonen did. Didn't Raikkonen leave to go do rally?
Yes.
Yeah, so when you feel like you can't give any more, when you're not pushing yourself to your limits, go drive rally. Bottas, go drive rally. You're not doing it. You're just sitting there in Formula One now. And there was one other apology I wanted to make too. Like, you talked about my misogyny. I wasn't trying to be misogynistic. So I want to just clarify. I have no problem with Bernie Collins. I gave you all my issues with Danica Patrick. That other Michelle girl, I see after listening to it how I sounded very misogynistic. I see it. So I'm willing to admit my mistake. But all I was just saying about Bernie Collins is just like she's just there. She's not really lively in her discussions. And you're right. I didn't know she was an engineer or a former, was she in the paddock?
I think she's a strategist, former strategist.
Okay. Well, she doesn't say anything stupid to her in her defense. Like, she doesn't say anything where I'm like, oh, shut up. I just think she just gives these like very like calm, quiet analysis that's not really beneficial to anything that's ever going on in the race. And she sounds like a housewife who knows if she says something too over the line that her husband's going to beat her up. That's the way she talks.
And we're back.
She just sounds very like she's trying to walk this fine line. Like, yes, Martin, the cars are coming into the paddock now, and we're going to find out more information. She's like very quiet about it. She's trying not to say anything too crazy. It's like, yes, honey, the roast will be done in 20. Oh, I'm sorry, I burnt it. I'm sorry. Do you think I like hitting you? Do you think I like hitting you, Bernie?
I think we're done for today now. So we're 2 for 2 on the apologies that weren't really apologies.
I'm just saying, Bernie, be a little bit more lively. I have no problem with you being there. Just be more lively. That's what I was trying to say. But you were laughing, so it means you do see what I see. She does sound very like she's worried about what she's saying at all times. She's trying to walk this fine line. The housewife getting beaten thing was typical me.
I feel sorry for your girlfriend.
Yeah. I don't hit women. And I never will. That's on the record. Anything else you want to talk about the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix? They were apologies, basically. They had all the fundamentals of apologies.
Yeah. As far as Saudi Arabia goes, I don't know. I don't think we need to be there. It's not a particularly interesting track. It's fun to drive, sure, all the drivers say that. But at the same time, I think if it were to disappear, no one would really care.
This is why we have these discussions. You got me to just jump off or get off the ledge with Oliver Bearman. Stop being crazy. And I got you to hate Saudi Arabia like I hate it.
I never liked it.
Oh. Huh.
I've said before what I just said now. It's fun to drive. I've played it in the F1 game. It's fun to get around, sure. The drivers seem to corroborate that in actual hardware that, yeah, it's fast, it's fun, it's, dangerous, a lot of adrenaline. I don't think anybody gives a shit about it. It's a 3-year-old track. It's a one-stop race. You get stuck behind Kevin Magnussen, and then you're a minute and a half behind the lead. I don't think anybody actually enjoys the race part of it. Yeah.
All right. Anything like so? I guess you got no other points.
Not that I can think of, unless you think I missed something.
Is this Mercedes? Is this Mercedes all year?
Ugh. I hope not, because that would be extremely depressing. How do you go from the domination that they had to what is clearly an extreme loss of talent?
Russell seems lost. Hamilton doesn't know what he's doing. His mind's on Ferrari. It's ugly to watch.
Yeah, because it's not like Schumacher developed the car and then the car didn't change while they were dominant. The car changed numerous times while they were dominant. They know how to change the car. They know how to design a good car. So what the hell happened? They started brand new with a whole new concept, ditched the old one completely. So there shouldn't be any remnants of the nonsense that was there. I don't know why it's still so bad, might be a little harsh. Like I said, the field is converging and it gets harder to compete for the higher up positions. But they've got some truly clever tech on it. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but they have multiple pickup points on the chassis for the front suspension.
I haven't seen that.
In an effort to save weight and packaging and everything else, usually you pick a point at which the control arms connect to the chassis. And in a carbon fiber tub, you're locked into your choice because you're not going to make multiple tubs for every racetrack. But what what Mercedes has done is there's a panel right where the wishbones pick up, and I think it's just on the back side of the front wishbones. That whole panel comes off, and there are multiple mounting locations. There's at least 2, there might be more. So they can change where on the chassis that top wishbone picks up.
The wishbone's part of the wing or part of the
suspension.
The suspension, okay.
The wishbone is what connects the wheel hub to the car.
Okay. But yeah, there's multiple places for them to take it off and adjust it.
Yeah, so you can have it connect right at the top, you can have it connect down at the bottom, you can have it connect somewhere in between. So it's probably added weight to the car because now you need all the fixings of your suspension pickup points in multiple areas, and you need a cover for that and everything else. So there's a trade-off to it. But I think that would be negated by the setup ability of the car. Because moving that rear portion of the upper wishbone changes how the suspension reacts as you go through corners. So you can get better anti-dive performance, you can get better roll characteristics of the suspension by changing where that mounts. So effectively what they've done is create a chassis that is flexible per track. You can get adjustable suspension geometry above and beyond what you would normally be able to get. That should make them extremely competitive.
Well, come certain tracks, I think is what you're getting at.
Well, no, the idea is if it's adjustable, if you have multiple positions, you should know that Bahrain, I need it in this position. Saudi Arabia, I need it at the bottom. Baku, I need it here. Hungaroring, I need it here. All right, and then you still have adjustment of everything else around that. You should be able to set that thing up for every track specifically, whereas every other team that doesn't have that is stuck to the suspension design that they picked on day one. Right? it should make them extremely competitive across the board.
But it's not.
How much time is there in a suspension pickup point? I don't know. But you would think it's going to give them some benefit. It looks like they've gone backwards, and I hope that's not the case.
It could be the weight issue, like you were saying.
We're not talking kilos of weight.
I don't know. Something's wrong there, and it just doesn't seem like they're going to fix it anytime soon. Any other thoughts that I had? Another driver of the day that nobody seemed to talk about really at Saudi Arabia was Max Verstappen. I know we already hashed him out a little bit, but I hope that's not like the reason I bring that up is I hope it's not every race they're just kind of ignoring how great his achievements are. I think it's 10 in a row in Australia, and we'll talk about that more for our predictions. So that'll be next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Bernie Collins, I love you. Okay? You're doing fine. So yeah, unless you got anything else,
I'm good.
all right.
We'll rein Gatsby in a bit for next week. Fewer interruptions.
Yeah, he did an okay job. He did an Oliver Bearman style job, I think.
You're going to give him that much credit?
Good enough. But unlike Sky Sports, we're not overvaluing him. We're not treating him like the next best producer. Right, Gatsby?
I don't know what that was, but
Gatsby.
all right, bud.
Gatsby. Unbelievable. All right. That was episode 6. Once again, Formula1_philosophy at Instagram. F1 Philosophy Pod at gmail.com if you want to join our fantasy league. We expect 100 emails this week. And only 5 of you can join. Or can 100 people join? Actually, in that fantasy league, how many people can join?
I think we opened it up to either 10 or 20 teams.
Okay, well, we still expect 100 emails.
Yeah, we want to say no to some of you.
Yeah. Not all of you deserve to be in our league. It's cool now, isn't it? It's now an exclusive league. All right, everybody. Have a great night.